right now somewhere we're between sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or maybe even 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I mean, from today's conversation between President Trump and President Zelensky, we can at least draw the conclusion that the two presidents are once again sort of speaking regularly, speaking normally, and without the anger and the hostility that we saw of a couple of weeks ago that really set this process back dramatically. So we have a bit of a victory there in that the two presidents are communicating. As far as the actual peace agreement or the ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, both sides are already accusing each other of violating that this morning. So there were attacks allegedly from Russia on Ukrainian energy installations, and Russia says that Ukraine is doing the exact same thing back.
So when Steve Witkoff says he believes that, I think he said to some extent, well, some of these attacks were already happening, or I don't know, I guess the devil and timing is always in the detail, or the devil's in the details. He believes that President Putin is acting in good faith. Your knowledge of President Putin and how he does things, do you think he is?
Well, one of President Trump's predecessors in the White House, when talking about Russia, always said, trust but verify. And, you know, there hasn't been a whole lot of verification going on lately. And what we do know is that President Putin has in the past gone back on his word when it comes to holding off on attacking Ukraine.
Right.
And so with what happened this morning and with the fact that the timing, as you suggest, is still incredibly vague on when this is all going to start and when the ceasefire will kick off, we still don't know, first of all, what President Putin's word is and when or if he'll start to obey it.
So I just want to get your thoughts about where we are, in your view, if this actually is the beginning of the end of the war. You mentioned that both sides are already not agreeing to what had been agreed upon. But you also said that it's good news that the U.S. is speaking to both of these parties. Do you actually think this is the beginning of the end of the war?
It might be. I mean, I think if this is the beginning of the end of the war, it's going to take a lot longer than any of us anticipate and a lot longer than any of the actors in these negotiations are telling us. I mean, we know, look, that the strategic driver for Putin behind all of this is to keep fighting. So when he says that he's engaged in ceasefire negotiations, when he says that he's interested in a ceasefire, he's really not being entirely genuine with his counterparties, because really what Putin wants to do is to continue to press on. He thinks he's winning on the ground in Ukraine. His progress has been a little bit better than previously, and right now there's very little incentive for him to stop.
So that's a perfect place to sort of transition to business in Russia over the last few decades, something that you've been writing about and that you know a lot about. If we were talking to you 3 years ago, we'd be talking to you about all the American businesses that have announced that they've stopped doing business in Russia as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I think a lot of people then would have thought this is going to have huge economic consequences and effects on the country and might cause Russia to think twice about what it's doing militarily. That obviously didn't happen, right?
Well, exactly right. I mean, if we were talking about this precisely 3 years ago, what we would be talking about is absolute sort of streams of Western executives stampeding towards Moscow's airports, among other places, trying to get out of the country. And this was exactly 3 years ago, a time when international offices, European and American offices, were physically emptying out of expats and of Russian employees who were desperate to leave the country because the full-scale invasion was kicking off. And so if we look at it now, you know, the U.S. business community is looking at the negotiations between Trump and Putin, and they sense that sanctions relief is in the air. And there are active conversations now in the companies that left Russia 3 years ago about going back. Not everyone will do it, but everyone is talking about it.